This episode was recorded on the unceded lands of the Kulin Nation. Hello and welcome. Today on the POSLink Plus Listen podcast, we're joined by designer and longtime community member Daniel Cordner. Daniel is the creative force behind LPV's recently refreshed brand identity. Daniel has been part of LPV's story for many years, and his design work from logos to community-led projects reflects both professional expertise and a deep personal connection to the people we serve. In this conversation, we'll talk about the process behind LPV's new look, the inspiration for the brand mark we now call The Node, and the challenges of balancing history with innovation. We'll also explore Daniel's wider design journey, how he first discovered his passion for design, the influences that shaped his style, and why he believes design has the power to drive social change. Enjoy. Hey Daniel, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. I was wanting to just start with a little bit about your background and how you first got into design. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about it.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me here today to talk about design in the LPV relaunch. So I started as a graphic designer. When I was younger, I always wanted to be an artist, like many people in design. But having parents that didn't really understand an art background, the preference was to maybe do something a little more practical with it. So at the time I knew of graphic design, but it wasn't until I started looking at universities that I then understood what the power of actually graphic design is. So I think for me, the appeal with design has always been about visual communication. So it's a way to visually communicate messages, ideas, concepts through a visual approach. When I was a kid, a lot of my design was very graphic and detail-based. So I think this was a natural progression with my creativity anyway, but that was really the starting point for me as a designer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen some of your drawings before. Is that something you did a lot as a kid, a lot of drawing?
I did, and I still do draw occasionally, and I think I'll probably never let go of the idea that someday I will become a fully fledged artist. So I haven't quite got there yet, but I think the beauty of design, it allows you to stay connected into the creative world. And some of my clients or jobs in the past have been in the art sector. And so there's always that link back into the world that I love the most. So, but yeah, still always inching towards still my own creative practice and maybe one day becoming a fully fledged artist.
Yeah, absolutely. And were there any pivotal projects or moments early on in your career that changed your approach to design?
There's probably two main ones that stand out. So my second job was with the Art Centre, or what was known as the Victorian Art Centre at the time. Yeah. So I took that job after doing 2 years of work at the Herald Sun. Wasn't necessarily what I'd imagined my career to be. And I jumped ship as soon as I could for a 6-month contract at the Art Centre.
Yeah, great.
That turned into 4.5 years. And that was the most life-changing job for me for many reasons. One, it opened up the whole world of performing arts, which I hadn't really had a heap of exposure to. But secondly, it also opened up the world of circus for me. So as a kid, much like I wanted to be an artist, I also wanted to be an acrobat. So both of those things I didn't quite get to fully pursue.
Yeah.
But through the Art Centre, I found out about circus training, and that engulfed quite a number of years of my life. So it became really influential as far as stepping into a creative, quirky bunch of people that I fitted really well with, and also working in the arts. The second job for me that was quite pivotal in my career was when I stepped out of the Art Centre, I did some contract work for a while. One of those contract jobs was with Oxfam. So it was only a short little contract job, but years later they had me back to do other work, which then led into one of the guys that worked for Oxfam, worked for a company in the States called International Rivers, and then also to another organization called Amazon Frontlines. So that was kind of my first little step into not-for-profit work and doing work on a global scale as opposed to more of a local scale. So I think that work for me really influenced some of the work that I get to do today.
Yeah, great. And talking about influence, who are some of those artists or designers that you really admire that have influenced your work to date?
So I think back to probably maybe more when I was a student, maybe some of the designers and artists that influenced me the most. People like Sol Bass or Steven Sugmeister, People like Deborah Millman. Deborah Millman does a podcast called Design Matters, and she has lots of influential designers and thinkers come through and really talk about the power of design in the world that we live in. Probably another person who would rank really highly in there, good old Keith Haring. Keith Haring, not just from the point of view of his history and his work that he does, but his ability to intertwine his life and his activism with his art. And I think that's still so impactful today, to be able to merge those two worlds together.
And out of interest, apart from the amazing logo that you've done for LPV, do you have a favorite logo of yours?
A favorite logo of mine?
That you've either designed or just in general. Do you have one out in the wild that's really speaks to you or has influenced you in some sort of way?
That's a good question. I'd probably maybe think about some of the ones that I've done that have maybe then lasted the distance of time. So one of my clients that I still work for, she runs a gallery. So I started working with her 15 years ago. The logo I did for her 15 years ago is still the exact same logo. She's had many firms approach her and ask about design work or a rebrand, and she says is just as modern to her today as what it was 15 years ago.
Still holds up.
So I think those jobs that they last the distance and they're almost a little bit timeless in some sense.
Yeah. And so what role then does community play in your broader work outside of LPV? Do you do much community work?
So it's played a really big part for me, especially in the past decade, I'd say. So next year for me will be 20 years of living with HIV. So it's a bit of a milestone. I'd probably say it's the last decade that I've done a lot more volunteer work and community-based work. So the slight segue is that the first part of my diagnosis, I didn't really tell many people. I didn't come to terms with my acceptance, and that had some rather disastrous consequences. Once I started to engage in the community through some volunteer work. So actually the first way I stepped into the community was designing the magazine for the Positive Living Centre. So I wanted to do volunteer work. Somebody was like, well, we've got the job for you because it's design-based. When I looked at the publication, I immediately saw scope of what it could be. So there was something missing in that publication, and that was people. So I think when I first started, I looked around and couldn't see people like myself. There was a lack of visibility, a lack of people owning their status. So that job for me was, I guess, the first stepping stone into the community. That led on to Positive Speaker Bureau. So I did that for, I think, 3-4 years. And then over that time, I guess I started to understand the real power of community. So for a big part of my life, I almost avoided it. And it wasn't until I actually stepped into that I realized the true power of connection and actually what the community does. And that was a big part that was missing in my life in the early part of my diagnosis. So I think then for me, the community part is really integral on the basis of seeing how transformative that is in my own story. When you don't have the community there and you're not doing the community work, you're kind of a little bit alone, essentially. Not until you speak to other people, hear their stories and hear their experiences, that it actually kind of helps you unpack and process your own and see it from a very different perspective. So I think then some of the more recent projects have been very community focused. For example, a project I worked on a couple of years, HIV Science as Art. So that was very much around the scientific community and also the artistic community as well.
Yeah.
Coming together, collaborating and creating a new artwork based around the science of HIV. I think the power of those projects, HIV Science as Art and HIV Unwrapped, is it doesn't just tap into the positive community, but it also taps into the scientific community as well. And there's been some really transformative moments from scientists that have come on board that have spoken about just how life-changing those projects were to collaborate with somebody and understand their lived experience. So that is a really an unexpected outcome for me, to know that we're tapping into the scientific community and helping them understand the lived experience through the process of creativity and art.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to something you were saying before about that people-centric approach to design for these community-run organizations, which I think is really important when you see people with lived experience through that design, it really uplifts it and, shares that experience. I also just wanted to ask about your lived experience. You spoke about your positive diagnosis and how that might have shaped your design process for this rebranded LPV.
So my diagnosis, like a lot of people, it's intertwined into all aspects of your life, whether you want it to be or not. They can be good things. They can also be bad things. One of the reasons I became a freelance graphic designer was in part through HIV. So I was diagnosed in 2006. I went traveling in South America for 2 years, from 2008 to 2010. That was the first time I started doing freelance work. So I took my laptop with me, started doing a few small jobs for people back home. The downside of that was that over that 2-year period, I wasn't taking medication before I went traveling. So I came home with an AIDS-defining illness, PCP pneumonia, oral candida. I had a parasite growing in my leg called leishmaniasis from the Amazon.
Yeah.
And so when I first came back, my health was pretty much at rock bottom. I pretty much destroyed my immune system. So those first couple of years took a long time for my immune system to get back on track. At the time when I came back from South America, there was no way that I could have held down a full-time job. I needed to prioritize my health and get that back on track. So that's where I started doing more freelance work. And that for me opened up, I guess, where I'm at today. It opened up a lot more freedom with different clients I work with. It also allowed me to, I guess, have the freedom that comes with being a freelancer and put my health and the things that mattered to me first.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing that, Daniel. Now, I wanted to get more at the moment into the actual design of the logo and the rebranded LPV. So I was working with you throughout this process, along with a number of other people at LPV. And it was a really great process to work with you through it. I think everyone brought something to the table, and we looked at several different options that you provided, and then really honed down on the one that was chosen in the end, which focuses around this node shape. The node is what we decided to call it. It's that sort of blob shape at the end of the V. Can you walk us through how you developed this idea of the node?
Yeah, of course. I think the whole process for me was a very enjoyable process, as far as actually letting everybody be involved in that early stage. I think projects like this, it's really important to have people be a part of it, to have some ownership over what the final product looks like. And I think we managed to do that really successfully. The idea behind the node came from certain conversations in the early part of the brief, was talking about some link to the history of the organization. We're talking about whether it was using certain components of the logo or whether it was actually using things like the LPV blue, just to have that link to the history of the organization. So through that kind of discovery, looking at the previous logo, I looked at the 3 dots and started to evolve that. So the idea behind the 3 dots, or the node, or the evolution of the node, is that it's community coming together, and community coming together intersecting with LPV, which is why it intersects with the V at the very end. Also too, then the node also took on multiple meanings, is in a lot of people saw it as something fluid. And so we spoke about this actually representing the fluid itself. So breast milk, blood, and semen. So for me, those things are what connects us all together as far as a community. We all have very different upbringings, backgrounds, histories, narratives, so diverse and so different and unique in our own stories, but we have this common thread that connects us together, and that is the virus itself. So for me, that's where the node representing community, the intersection of community and the virus, became a really powerful device to really start to encapsulate what LPV does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, we looked at probably 7, 8, 9 different designs that you showed us overall, and we kept coming back to that one just because it was so visually striking, and everyone, no matter how many design meetings we had, everyone had more to say about it and was able to give it more meaning, which I think just speaks about how well it was designed and how it will stand up, because people can bring their own meaning to it as to, you know, what it means for them. So did you come across any challenges in balancing that respect for LPV's history and, you know, the push towards a more bold and modern identity?
I don't know whether there was necessarily pushback as such, but I think it was something that we were all very attuned to be respectful to that past. One of the variations of the logo was to maybe look at some of that iconography of maybe the past, let's say the pink triangle or the ACT UP triangle. As much as that by itself is an incredibly powerful design motif, it really links back to the past. Whereas an organization in the evolution of HOV, we're forever moving forward. So I think in all those conversations, what we did was to be respectful about the past. We wouldn't be here today without the past, but we're also choosing to move forward. So a lot has changed in HOV in the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And so I think as long as there is a nod and a respect to where we've come from, that allows us to move forward in a much bolder direction safely. So I feel what we've done with this current rebrand, the two key things are drawing inspiration from the previous logo with the 3 dots to create the node, but also still using the LPV blue. So some people, perhaps new members, they may not notice that link. I think for maybe older members or people that have been a member of the organization for a longer period of time, they would see those connections there and understand that we're not completely scrapping the past. We're just extending and building upon everything that we've already built.
Yeah. And for people listening that might not know what we're talking about, so the 3 dots come from the previous logo, was almost like a stylized family, wasn't it? It was sort of a V created maybe the mother and the father figure, and then there's a smaller little stripe for the baby, and then there were 3 dots above representing their heads. So that's where it sort of, those all sort of morphed into this node motif.
And taking that kind of sort of, because the previous logo I think was 10 years old.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and so still kind of retaining part of that history in a very subtle way. You know, I think if I can say that logo for me,
you can say it.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
Look, it was not my favorite logo.
No.
10 years ago, I did, and this was probably when I first started to make little baby steps into the sector and start to, I guess, be a bit more active. I remember there was a call out for people to come and comment on the new LPV branding. I remember going into that being so excited, thinking there's so much I can contribute. This is right up my alley. And at the time, the logo just went ahead and it completely has done the job. But I guess secretly been waiting for a decade to get my hands on this one and perhaps give it the attention that it actually really deserves. So yeah, I've been secretly waiting for a long time to get my hands on this project. And actually, you know, it's not necessarily trying to throw shade on the old logo. It's more about, I always saw it as a missed opportunity to have something that really represents and showcases what the organization does.
Yeah. And I think it was perfect timing as well. I mean, that logo had been used for, as you say, I think it was made in 2012. So, you know, it was over a decade old. And I think that was a design competition that went to a site called 99designs.com. And I think there was some discussions with community, but it wasn't a community designer. And I think it served its purpose definitely during that time, and it was probably bold for its time, but definitely needed that refresh, and which is what I think this brings, is just like a new take on it, and then also acknowledging where we've come from and not just completely scrapping that altogether. It's building on it, it's enhancing it. So I think this will well outdo a decade. I think it'll stick around for ages.
Look, I mean, I hope so. And, you know, I mean, I guess when I think about projects like this too, I mean, it'd be amazing in a decade if there wasn't such a need for an organization like this. I mean, that's kind of like aspirational. So, you know, it'd be wonderful if, wouldn't say if LPV doesn't exist, but if there's not such a need for such a focused organization for such a specific healthcare need.
Mm.
I also think, though, too, if I think about the previous logo, in the context of when that was done and created, I feel like maybe that the sector was perhaps a bit safer with the approach as well too. I feel like things like U equals U was maybe understood and spoken about, but it wasn't publicly acceptable. And it's still not publicly acceptable, but I think the concept wasn't known.
Yeah.
There was probably a lot more stigma around transmission, around people living with the virus. And I feel like perhaps during that time, certain organizations had to take maybe a safer approach as opposed to being bold. Now I think we are in a very different time where we don't need to be so safe. And I use that word carefully in our sector. We're always safe, but I think with our messaging, we no longer need to be safe. We need to be bolder. We need to be more in people's faces, because also too, maybe a decade of being a little bit safer hasn't really achieved the desired outcomes of things like reducing stigma.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think in this day and age, you think about how much social media and the internet has changed in the last decade, needing to cut through the noise of so many different organizations and even activists, like personal individual activists, all wanting to get your eye on whatever content they're making. At the moment, we're always sort of pushing towards online content that can speak to younger audiences and get them involved with our organization. So to really cut through that noise, you do need to be a bit more sort of bold and out there.
I think that's a really important part as far as a younger demographic. So we often do have conversations about where are the younger people in our community. And I think there are young people that have been recently diagnosed and living with HIV. We need to make sure that they are part of the conversation, that they're a voice that's heard. And I do feel through those visual needs or visual mediums and through social media, that is the way that we do engage with an audience that maybe in the past may not have wanted to engage with LPV. It may not have been an organization that they thought suited their needs. And hopefully now with the rebrand and a more bold, dynamic approach, there could be a whole new demographic that starts to see LPV with a different set of eyes.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think that's the power of design, right?
Yeah.
Now, I just want to get into the sort of nitty gritty about how you approach actually designing something like this. So how did it all start? Does it start with a sketch, or, are you fully digital? Like, how do you go about that?
So I'm probably more of an old school designer. I still always like the old techniques and tools that I first learnt. So I definitely embrace the digital part of being a designer. It's impossible not to nowadays. So admittedly with this logo, I did not start with pen and paper, but many projects I still do prefer to start with pen and paper. I feel like it's such a great way to flush out ideas without being influenced by all the tools that we have at our fingertips all the time. So I think with this project specifically, while I didn't start sketching it out, what I did draw a lot from was actually all of the work that I've been doing in the sector for the past decade. So I've been really fortunate to work with a lot of local organizations, national organizations, and international organizations. And I think that's really influenced how I start a project like this. Also, another really important part of what I do when I start a project is research. So I will research as many other like-minded organizations as I can to look at what they're doing, to also make sure that we're not creating a logo that's already similar to what's being done. And then I'll also look at maybe some common threads that I maybe want to avoid. So in this instance, if you search for HV organizations, probably 50% or 70% will all include either the color red or the ribbon. And they all have their historical context, but potentially they're quite overused and a little bit maybe outdated. So the research is a really crucial part of it. Next stage is then to start to have fun. Essentially, it's taking all that research, trying to find maybe some gaps in other design work that's been done, and then having fun and playing essentially is a really important part of it as well.
So then to get to the node shape that is sort of the main motif of our logo, was that something you you looked at those three dots and then you sort of created three dots in a program and then started to play around with connecting them and
Yeah,
that sort of thing?
I took the same three dots from the old logo, and then I just started to, I guess, look at them from a different perspective, and then was thinking, how can those three dots represent something more? And then through different techniques started to, I guess, morph them together, which became the node shape. There were multiple variations of how many nodes were on that shape, the sizing of them, the way that sat in proportion with the logo. So lots of different iterations, the angle of it. But eventually then we landed on the right size, the right shape, and the right kind of configuration of what those three circles or three dots then represented.
Yeah. And I think something about this node shape, which is really brilliant, which is something that was maybe lacking with the last logo, was its adaptability to suit all sorts of different mediums. And, we can blow this node shape up and, have different photos coming out of it, or we can play around with the shape and the size and sort of really adapt it to what we need for social media or for videos or whatever it needs. It's really great.
I think one of the things that I was really keen to do with this logo was to make it fun. So I knew that I wouldn't be working on every single piece of collateral that was created. So in this instance, well, that's yourself that's actually working really heavily with the style guide and creating a lot of content for social media. I wanted it to be flexible enough that somebody could take that, work with it freely, but also kind of have fun with it and have their own spin on it. So that was a really important part for me to have those devices or have those parts of the brand that allowed someone to have fun and play with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, interested to know, now that we've spoken about all of that, how would you sum up the new brand in just 3 words, if you can?
So 3 words for me that would describe the brand. One would definitely be modern. So I think it is a very modern, contemporary logo that really encapsulates where LPV is at right now. Mm-hmm. So modern, moving forward, and embracing the future. I'd also describe it as positive. Obviously, we're a bunch of positive people, but I think that there's something positive and uplifting about it. In the past, some design related to HOV perhaps had more of a somber, kind of sad, sort of morbid approach. Yeah. And that's, once again, a significant part of the HOV narrative.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's something really positive and perhaps joyful about the new brand. And hopefully maybe somebody recently diagnosed or hasn't engaged with the community might see that and kind of see that sense of positivity and excitement that can come from engaging.
It's honoring the past, but also looking towards the future.
And embracing that part of the future.
Yeah.
Probably the third word I'd describe, which I spoke about before, is playful, fun. It's obviously HOV is incredibly serious. Living with a virus where there's still no cure is very serious. But I also think the community itself is incredibly fun and mischievous and playful and naughty. And I think that's part of who we are as well. We are so much more than just the virus itself. We are all these other things. We are positive, we are playful, we are incredible human beings. And so I think that idea of fun really encapsulates or shows that we are more than just the virus itself.
Yeah, great. So modern, playful, and positive.
Yes.
Whack that on a poster.
Yeah, exactly. That can be the 3 little taglines. We can replace connect, support, navigate.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, with modern, playful.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So looking towards what's next for you, what have you got coming up? What are you excited about exploring next?
So probably the major project for me at the moment would be HOV Unwrapped. So recently we've just completed the 6th version of that with another 2 in the pipelines. I probably can't say too much more on those just yet, but watch this space.
Yeah.
I think this is a project that is definitely gaining a lot of traction and a lot of interest.
And it's been so successful as well. We've seen it now in New York and over in the last HIV conference in Rwanda, and then I think before that it was at a conference in Munich, wasn't it? So yeah, obviously it's a piece of design work that holds up and has been really popular.
Along with that, and this is another watch this space, around World AIDS Day, there will be a mini documentary launched around the most recent version of HIV Unwrapped, which took place for New York Fashion Week. So there'll be a little documentary airing around that. And we're currently at the early stage of building a website to showcase all of the project in its entirety. So there's incredible stories, incredible designers, incredible narratives, and incredible garments. And so we're pulling that together in one location, which as new versions of the project come up, will be added to in time. So that's probably the main big scale project at the moment that's on the go.
Yeah, awesome. Can't wait to look forward to that. And just finally, if you had any advice for community members thinking about becoming a graphic designer, what would you say to them?
On one hand, I would say do it because it's amazing and I have no regrets at all. But I would also say don't step on my toes and my clients.
Yeah.
No, not at all. No, look, if anybody was a designer or thinking about it and wanted to work deeply with the community, I would highly recommend it. I think for me, it has been such a rich blessing of incredible opportunities that have come my way through working in the sector that I don't know if I would have got outside of the sector. So I feel, there's the saying, nothing about us without us. And I think the community does like to give opportunities to people with lived experience. What that's done for me, that's only deepened my connection to the community. This is not just it is a job for me, but it's much more than a job because this is also my life as well. So I think my advice would definitely be go for it. It's just such a great way to deepen your connection within the community and also have moments to share your own experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
You're welcome.
Thank you again for your amazing rebrand. We just love it here. And I think from the feedback that we've had, a lot of people out there love it as well. If people want to find you, where can they do that?
You can go to danielcordnerdesign.com and check out my website or on Instagram.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, and hope to see you soon.
Amazing. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of POSLink Plus Listen. You can find more episodes on our website or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe to stay up to date. And for all the latest news, events, and resources from us, head to lpv.org.au and join us on our social channels.